Welcome to Blue Talks.
Hello, it's quite an honor to be here today at the prestigious Cambridge University. There have been a lot of great minds and great thinkers that have traipsed the hallowed hallways in Cambridge over the years, I think about 800 years to be exact. So it really is quite an honor to be here. I gave a talk, a blue talk at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Boston a few months ago, and I proffered a question, and that question was, how do you thank a dog for saving your life? How do you thank someone? What if that someone were a dog? How would you thank a dog for saving your life? And no hands went up. Well, I've been trying to answer that question for almost a decade, and that's why I was in Boston, and that's why I'm at Cambridge today. You see, since that time, that question has morphed into a dream. And I gotta tell you that I spent a lot of my time in codependent relationships, and they were addicts. I didn't know it at the time. And I joined the Al-Anon program, and they said, you know, that if your parents were alcoholic or addict, you're inclined to subconsciously look for people to get involved with that have addiction problems. And that absolutely was the case in my life. And when you're involved with an addict, you become sicker than the addict themselves. They have the drugs and the alcohol to numb the pain. You don't have that freedom, that liberty. And I can tell you that my life at the time was not worth living. It was dreadful. And at one point, and then they tell you that you try to rescue the wounded bird, the addict, because that's what you've done maybe with your parents. And you have a master's degree in that. Well, it wasn't working. And so one day I bought a yellow Labrador puppy and gave it to the addict in my life. How foolish. But then life didn't make any sense for me at the time anyway. Well, the puppy became the victim of abuse. And I learned the puppy was going to be traded for rocks of crack cocaine. And I couldn't let that happen. And I was ready to get away. So I got in a camper, went out west in the US, left my family, my friends behind, but I was stuck with that puppy. And I resented that puppy. I couldn't get a hotel room because I had a damn dog. And every time I walked the puppy, what a cute puppy, and I felt like saying, get out of my damn face. My life was miserable. I ended up in a little town of Ajo, Arizona, just north of the US-Mexico border. And one day I'm working on my camper in a drunken stupor, and the camper falls on my leg, and I couldn't bend it. I had a blood clot. And I went into the camper, I kicked my shoes off, and I couldn't get to my sock. And the puppy ran over, and I shooed him away, but he grabbed my sock and he took it off. And I said, give me my sock. Later that day, he's chewing on my shoe. Stop that. You know what he did? He brought me my shoe. A few nights later, I decided to give up on life. This was it. I had a gallon of vodka. I had a knife, and I couldn't even commit suicide, right? Life was screwed up. But in the morning, there was a knock at my camper door. It was children. Mister, we have a dog. Can our dog play with yours? Yeah, take the dog. 20 minutes later, I heard this scream. Oh! And I just knew the puppy had been hit by a car because everything in life was bad. And I opened up that camper door expecting the worst. And the puppy was crying. He was in pain. The children started crying. He's okay, mister. He's okay. And I started crying. Let me correct that. I was squalling. And I brought that puppy inside. And I slept the better part of 3 days with that puppy in my arms. And when I woke up, I looked into his eyes, the window to the soul. And I said, I get it now. I had a Helen Keller-like epiphany. Moment and a breakthrough. And I realized I resented that puppy because he was always happy and I was always miserable. But now I kind of got it. He was always pulling me to healthy, happy people. And I made a promise to a dog that I would share him with the world. And I Googled dogs that help people. I learned of service dogs. I found this amazing place called the Assistance Dog Institute, Bergen University of Canine Studies, founded by the lady Bonnie Bergen. And I went out to California, and I got a degree in canine life sciences. And my passion for self-destruction became a passion to help others to change the world for the better. I had a newfound purpose for living. Now I wanted to live. So I got my education at Bergen, and I took my booster, and we traveled the world trying to make a difference as we could. We went into communist Cuba when President Obama opened it up for U.S. travel. When we got there, we ended up on live television, live radios as Americans, met the leader of the blind ANSI, the group for the disabled Oclafim, met the leader of Aniplant for the animals and welfare. It was amazingly successful. The dog was quite the social lubricant. I read later that Thailand was underwater. I had gone through the ravages of Hurricane Katrina. When you have a flood, you lose everything. When you have a fire, maybe the car is left in the driveway. But when you have a flood, there's nothing left. I felt sorry maybe for the children in Thailand. So my booster and I jumped on a plane, never went to Asia before. We ended up contacting orphanages, and they welcomed us. One orphanage was a little more special maybe than the others. You see, all these children had HIV. They were such valiant warriors and heroes. I had screwed up my life, right? My own doing. They had no choice. When I got home, I had drawings from the Thai children. We love your dog, Booster. They're my most valued possessions in life today. We went into Mexico, met children with disabilities, autism, blind. One little Mexican boy reached out. He wanted to pet my dog, but he was afraid. The mom came up, and the little boy reached, and he pushed, and he reached, and my dog, Booster, raised his head to meet the boy's hand, and they were as one. Another little boy, my booster at the time had a tumor removed. You can see it on his head, and he lost his right eye. It had to be removed. This little Mexican boy is on the floor. He's squeezing my dog like a piñata. The mother leans over, "Senor, my son has just lost the right eye to cancer, just like your dog." Wow. We later went into the Bahamas. My booster became an honorary Bahamian, right? We met the leader for the disabled, Sheila Colmer, president of the National Council for Disabilities. I said, "Sheila, can you bring a service dog in a hotel room?" "No, not in this country, Dave. We'll never get a national disability law passed." I spent 8 years, my booster. We went all over the Bahamas, television, radio, newspapers, schools. A year after he passed away, Sheila called me, "Dave, we got our law." "Sheila, really? Dave, we got more media attention with your dog than we had in the preceding 30 years. And I was scared to ask, "Sheila, does it include guide dog or service dog access?" "Oh, Dave, it's all there." Once again, buckets of tears, right? She invited me to attend a Bahamas National Disability Awareness Week in Nassau. So we went to the native Golden Gates Baptist Church. Booster demonstrated his skills to the congregation. He opened the refrigerator, he brought water. He brought me my shoes. He took my socks off. He hit the light switch. He was so talented. And then the preacher turned to me and asked me to say some words to the congregation. I wasn't really happy about that because I wasn't good at speaking at that time, but I did it. And I walked to the front of the stage, and I looked out, and all these beautiful people, some were missing an arm, some were missing a leg, others were in wheelchairs, right? But they all had one thing in common. Their eyes were big as saucers. They were afraid of my booster, the 100-pound dog. A 100-pound dog can do some damage, right? But I told them, I read in your newspaper today, you've had over 100 murders in Nassau this year, and not one was committed by a dog. Perhaps you have more to fear from the person seated in God's house beside you than the dog in front of you. He'll work the rest of his life for free to give you a better life. It is man's inhumanity to man you should fear, maybe not the dog. And with that, the preacher changed his whole sermon and talked about how God put animals into humans' lives. It's been said that the more we complicate our world, the more we turn to dogs for a solution. In the US today, more veterans die from suicide than battle. 22 hours out of 24 hours a day, a veteran is taking his life. At Bergen University, they had started a program, Paws for Purple Hearts. They have veterans with psychiatric issues, train dogs for veterans, maybe with traumatic brain injuries and disabilities. And what they have found is that the veteran, the anger comes down. And the symptoms of the PTSD come down, and the dogs are saving lives. Personally, this is one of my booster's progeny. We were in a park in Arkansas, and I tried to talk to this war veteran, but I couldn't connect. He had no interest whatsoever. I could not connect with him. And I turned to leave, and the veteran is on his bended knee with a cane. He connected with my dog instantly. Look, you've got the dog's tongue on the warrior's face. Does it get any closer than that? By way of another example, in 1961, Nikita Khrushchev, chairman of the Soviet Union, he gifted a puppy named Pushinka, Fluffy, to President Kennedy's daughter, Carolyn. Leaders, adversaries, two greatest countries in the world, they had a common denominator, the love of the dog. A few years later, it was time for the Cuban Missile Crisis. The world was at the brink of nuclear war. In the war room, you had all the leaders at the time in the US, McNamara and the others, pounding the tables. All right, guys, we're going to go in and we're going to take them out. We're going to bomb them. Halfway through all that drama, President Kennedy asked the kennel master to bring his dog to him. And I think it was an Irish wolfhound gifted by an Irish priest. I think the dog's name was Wolfie. And the president resolutely petted his dog. And at the end of the day, he made a very unpopular decision. He said, no, guys, we're not going to bomb Cuba. We're going to put a naval blockade around the island and pray that the Soviet ships armed with a nuclear warhead will turn around. And as history has shown, that's exactly what happened. So it's been said that President Kennedy's decision was likely an offshoot of the calming influence derived from petting his dog, who loyally lay by his side that day, the dog. So when I talked about man's inhumanity to man that I expressed in the Bahamas, there is a place right now in this world where unconscionable acts of human cruelty defy belief. I will not describe them, but if you get on the internet, I can guarantee you'll be horrified. Man's inhumane acts being committed in Ukraine as we speak, they make Hannibal Lecter seem like a philanthropist. But there's good and there's bad, right? So in Ukraine, there was a 26-year-old young lady. She was in the basement seeking protection from the bombs, and she ventured out because she was a volunteer at a dog shelter. The dogs hadn't eaten for 3 days. So Anastasia went to feed them. The soldiers saw her and shot her dead. Why? I tried to help, and I found that if you rent a unit on Airbnb, you can rent a unit in Kyiv, and that money goes right into the Ukrainian's bank account. There's no administrative fees. Airbnb waives it. So I rented a room in a lady's home in Kyiv, never thinking I'd hear anything. So I get this email back on my Airbnb platform. Dear Davis, thank you for your help, me and my family from Kyiv. We're Ukrainian people. We help each other all the time, and I thank you for your support. If we stay alive, then my house is always open for you and your family. How many times have you all invited guests to your home and said, if we stay alive? I rented another unit, a condo, and I became actually a friend of a man and his wife. And I said, look, I'm going to rent your home for a few extra days, but would you take that money and maybe feed some elderly who are also suffering? So I got an email back from him with this beautiful photo of this elderly lady with the scarf draped around her head. His wife had taken that money and bought ingredients and baked bread for the senior citizens. How beautiful is that in such a country? I read a few weeks ago about a 12-year-old little boy in Texas who'd been bullied horribly in school. And he went knocking on the neighbor's door next door, and I think they had one of those Ring doorbell things. And he said, "I'm lonely. I want friends. I'm looking for friends." And he actually canvassed the neighborhood and said, "I need friends." And the lady that he knocked on the door, she put it on the internet and it went viral. And then I read that they set up a GoFundMe page for the young boy, and he said he wanted to donate a portion of his GoFundMe to Ukraine. How beautiful. I can think of no place on earth that needs service dogs more than Ukraine, where such human evil personifies man's inhumanity to man. In Ukraine, they have a hero, and he was awarded the Medal of Honor by the country's President Zelensky. That hero's name is Patron, and Patron is a Jack Russell Terrier, the dog once again. Patron was trained to find mines and other missiles left behind by the Russian forces. He saved hundreds, if not thousands, of lives. And here you have a photo, maybe, of Patron receiving his Medal of Honor from President Zelensky, and I think that's the President of Canada, maybe Justin Trudeau by his side. So I have a dream now. And a man I admire greatly said in 1963, "I have a dream." That was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He wanted to help those suffering from unconscionable atrocities and genocide due to racism. Well, I'm no Martin Luther King Jr. I'm simply a man that's grateful for his life and wants to help others. But I too have a dream to help those suffering from unconscionable atrocities and genocide due to man's inhumanity to man. So I envision the Anastasia Patron Booster Service Dog Training Center in honor of the young lady that lost her life going to feed the shelter dogs, in honor of Patron that risked his life, and in honor of my booster, who is dressed as John Lennon. Imagine. So, how do you thank a dog for saving your life? Well, maybe you dream. Maybe you can dream that you can honor his legacy. Maybe we can have Bergen University and have them train Ukrainians to bring that skill set back to Ukraine and help those who are suffering from the mental anguish or disfigured bodies due to man's inhumanity to man. So I dream that by employing the canine-human connection, we can make a difference in the world suffering horribly from man's inhumanity to man. I've written a book chronicling a lot of my boosters' stories around the world, and I welcome you to find it and read it. Any proceeds that come from that book are going to be donated to Bergen University of Canine Studies. My booster is from whence the dream came, for whom the bells toll. Because none of us stands alone in the world. Each human death affects us all. Every funeral bell, therefore, tolls for thee. And with that said, I want to thank you all very much for being here and listening to what I have to say. And I pray that man's inhumanity to man can be ameliorated to some extent by the canine-human connection. Thank you, and it's been an honor to talk here at Cambridge. Thank you.